Hi everyone, and welcome back to the George Collection. I am Rachel with Right Side Blonde. As you can see, I've got some new swag on today, thanks to Mr. Vincent Fusca. Thank you, Vincent, for this awesome shirt. It actually fits with what we're going to be talking about today, so I figured why not wear it and show it off and also incorporate it into the episode for today. So I hope you enjoy as much as I do. To start today's episode, I wanted to share with you kind of a revelation I had this morning actually on the elliptical of all places. So on my elliptical, for the last 5 years, I've been using the same elliptical, and I noticed last week or 2 weeks ago that there was a Q and a 47 on it. Again, I've been looking at this for the last 5 years, and I've never noticed the way this Q looks, but this morning I noticed it. And it got me thinking about the George logo and the G and the E, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, how I thought it was the opposition symbol in astrology. Now I'm starting to second guess that. If John Jr. wanted to put the 17th letter of the alphabet on the cover of his magazine, how else would he do it other than with that G and the E? So if you turn the G to the side, as in the Q that was on my elliptical, you can kind of see that perhaps that's what he was going for. What do you all think? Next, I wanted to bring up a little piece of our last interview with Juan O'Savin, which took place last week.
What else is in the entrance there at Mar-a-Lago? As you come past Heather's desk, and there's a little seating area. In that seating area, in this library section that you're talking about, that is kind of this sitting room, the first thing that you come to is a 747 on the table right there at the entrance. I could probably send you a picture of it. I'll send you a picture of it. You'll get a kick out of it. Right there on the table is the 747. It's Air Force One. Only thing is, it's Air Force One, and when President Trump was in office, one day the reporters are in there, they see the Air Force One on the table, and Barron is kind of shuffling it around and playing with it there. Well, what is it? It's painted in the same colors as John Jr.'s aircraft, and so this black and red stripe paint scheme on Air Force One, and President Trump said he was thinking about new color combination, new markings for Air Force One, and so he very famously did that. Well, then people realized, oh, well, why these colors specifically? Because it was Junior's, that which was denied to him in this, because he passed away in this plane crash, is the story. And so did he actually die in that manner? And why would somebody want him dead if it was not a natural event, if it was a manufactured event? Because he was on course to run for the Senate in New York. Who was running for the same seat? Hillary Clinton. And so the club that was keeping power for both of them prior to marriage, that club didn't want John in the blocking position in that Senate seat, so taking him out in the plane crash was a way of protecting and guaranteeing that Hillary would be able to take that seat. Part of the rest of the discussion is, was there an understanding that that was in play? And then, knowing that there was going to be this attempt to kill, did they in fact use that in the process to take a piece off the board in this multiple board chess game we're in and move it to a non-visible board so that it could be brought back and used later?
Given what Juan says about the red and white plane in Mar-a-Lago, is it any wonder why Carolyn Mulder is wearing a red and white striped outfit on the cover of the Survival Guide to the Future, where Junior's basically calling out everything that's going to be happening in the year 2020. If you look at the outfit itself, besides the red and white stripes, it almost looks like a space suit or pilot suit of some sort. It has wings on it, as if it's a plane. At least it does to me. So was Junior trying to tell us something with Karen Mulder's red and white outfit? Who knows, but it certainly seems plausible. In researching for this episode, I was listening back to some old news reporting from that time, and I found this interesting.
We have gotten better information from both the airports and the FAA through radar analysis of a better location, better possible location, and we are now centering our search about 17 miles west of Martha's Vineyard, the approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport. Indications are that we may have found some debris, and that's being investigated right now.
Ironically, there's a plane flying over right now as we're talking about John Jr.'s plane. I find that interesting. Also, if you watched my last video on connecting the dots and the color red, perhaps the color red has something to do with the plane and also Karen Mulder's outfit, and all of those kind of fit together. Perhaps that's what the three men were wearing red for. Let's talk about Karen Mulder herself. I think it was episode 5 that I briefly went over some of the connections to her and some people coming into the spotlight as of late. So I'll take a second to put that information now in case you missed it. Again, you all have to know this is all just speculation. I don't know one way or the other, but I'm putting the information out so you can make up your own minds, and perhaps it'll entice you to do more research on your own too. For the reading of this week's episode of the George Collection, I wanted to read a short little blurb called The Briefing Box. What is the role of the Federal Reserve? And it's in an interesting color of blue. Kind of stood out to me, so that's why I'm choosing that. And I think a lot of people in the movement today understand why a lot of things that are happening and a lot of tragedies that have happened in the past happened, and this could be one of those clues. Let's read. In 1913, Congress turned over its constitutional control of the money supply to a new entity known as the Federal Reserve. The goal was to bring order to a national monetary system prone to financial debacles, such as the Panic of 1907, when there weren't enough U.S. greenbacks to pay farmers for the full harvest. The Fed has since grown into a bureaucratic behemoth with 24,000 employees and a $2 billion annual budget. It performs an array of regulatory and financial services, including the shredding of $240 million a day in worn-out bills. But its most important chore, carried out by a Washington-based chairman, currently Alan Greenspan, is the setting of short-term interest rates for banks borrowing money from the Fed. Banks need credit for the same reason people do. Sometimes money goes out faster than it comes in. In managing interest rates, the Fed balances two imperatives: keeping inflation low and employment high. If the Fed keeps rates down, banks can do the same for their customers, and the economy blazes away. People buy more cars and houses because they can borrow easily and cheaply from banks. Employers hire more workers. Problems arise, however, if the economy overheats. Demand outstrips supply, pushing up prices and bringing on the dreadful specter of inflation. Wall Street particularly loathes inflation because it devalues fixed-rate investments such as bonds. Housing developers, manufacturers, and labor unions prefer that rates be kept low and the economy be allowed to grow vigorously. In recent years, Fed chairmen, such as Greenspan, have sided with Wall Street and done all they can to stifle inflation, which angers re-election-minded politicians who are willing to risk a little inflation to stoke the economy. But the Fed can afford to ignore politics. The chairman is appointed by the president for a 4-year term, during which he is answerable to no one. The Fed must be secretive, lest a bond trader divine its leanings in advance and make a killing. But it has come under fire for its lack of accountability. Recent allegations about the Fed's perks, including 7 executive dining rooms and a fleet of 47 Learjets, have fueled the campaign to let Congress monitor the Fed's deliberations. I think a lot of us understand what the Federal Reserve is and when it was created and why and who started it, but if you haven't, I encourage you to research that this week. That does it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't subscribed or liked any videos, please do so. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late-night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.